Welcome back. Bow chicka wow wow. Here it is, the original. The OG. Donald Kent. Live art stream. Continuing our story, let's do a little review. Where are we in the story? If you want to learn more about this, go to newdelphimedia.com and you can see character descriptions and videos, animations that give you an idea about this crazy socio-political satire. We are heading into the final battle between good and evil. Where the forces of light and dark come toe to toe. Sonata D8F is here. Hey man, I'm from the Telegram. Thought I'd check you out. What have you got going on today? I'm illustrating comics, and first of all, thanks for joining me. Illustrating comics. This is the New Delphi Media project that I've been hired to illustrate. NewDelphiMedia.com has all the videos and everything you want to learn about the characters. I designed 100 different characters for this universe. Imagine if memes and political influencers were superheroes and supervillains. For example, you know what trolls are, right? You know about the soy, like the Yes Jacks, Soy Jacks, Clown World, Pepe's, all kinds of different characters from reptilians, God Emperor, Trump, Putin, the Russian bear, NewDelphiMedia.com, media. It's a fun concept, very modern. Hello, Rexus, welcome back. This guy here is kind of Mr. Hyde, like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But there's also a guy in our political culture who does great comedy that wears glasses just like that with the name Hyde. Who could that be? And I'm sure all of you know about trolls and Pepe's and Chuds and all that good stuff. And so now they're facing off against this horrendous spaghetti monster, I guess is what they call it. Like I said, I don't write the story, I illustrate it. So all of these insane ideas come from our resident author. This here is Trad Cat, which is a spoof on the name Trad Cath, like Catholic. So Trad Cat, that's kind of a neat play on words. The great black Hebrew Israelite of all time, Sammy Samuel, Sam Hyde. Black Israelite. Yes, Sam Hyde is the man. We love him at New Delphi Media. Right. So, and I mean, this graphic novel might be over 200 pages, so there's a lot of content. There's a ton. I would take a time for me to get through all of that stuff, but if you want to open up another browser or something or check it out after the show, it's mind-blowing. So it's quite a huge project. So anyway, what I've been doing for the new folks, the new guys, is illustrating it live and leaving a kind of record, of the production of the book. So, if you scroll down this YouTube, you'll see hundreds of hours of comic book art by yours truly. And it's really A lot of it is just, friends hanging out, just we're just talking on the chat, bantering. But since we're all mostly in the same political realm, we talk about what's happening in the world, hot takes, whatever. We're not just limited to, say, politics. We talk about spirituality, UFOs, anything and everything that's interesting, I tell a lot of sort of personal stories, things that happened in my life. So it's very much a kind of like a little, I don't know, like a little diary or something in a way, my personal views on all kinds of stuff. We get lots of different guests from different countries. I think the algorithm is essentially marketing, I don't know if that's the right word, but it's listing this show as a kind of like how to learn how to draw comics, that kind of thing. And we get a lot of people who are young artists and want to learn how to draw. So on that note, I've actually started thinking about how to create an art course. It's finally occurred to me that I should be monetizing my art teaching degree, and part of it also is that I would like to offer some of that for free to members of the White Oak Creative Guild, which is kind of a new. It's not the White Art Collective, but it's an effort to kind of revive something like that. There'll never be another White Art Collective. That was a fantastic time. It was a golden age. We did a lot of great stuff. A lot of music in that culture, which was really cool. A lot of musicians and things of that nature. Anyway, I'm starting up my Nationalist Culture Review show at the end of the month. First guest is Greg Johnson. And then I'm just gonna, use that as a fun platform to look at all the cool reels and AI videos and music and stuff that's coming out. The far right culture has blown up on the internet. It's just gone like huge. It's enormous. Naturally, that a lot of these things do get censored or this or that, but we've got a lot of new creators out there, and I'm gonna have a platform on which we can feature that. And like a weekly show should be a lot of fun. That's the idea, is to have some fun. There's a lot of big brain people in the dissident right. And that's awesome. That's good. It's a good thing. But I feel like we also need to have some fun. I think we need to kind of spend more time culture building, creating some kind of place where people from the different generations can come together. There's a big generational divide in America in general, but on the internet culture, it's even more so. It seems like there's different ways of. It's just different cultural differences, and to the extent that younger people, that grow up within like an internet culture have. It's kind of like another land. It's like another country in itself, because there's a whole jargon and language and humor and lots of it, all this kind of stuff. A lot of sort of Groyper culture, I would say. It's not entirely that. There's a lot of National Socialist sites out there now that are going wild. Like, they're just going wild. Uncle A is making a major comeback in the younger cultures, and the world is waking up to Jewish global tyranny, hegemony, The invasion of Venezuela is a good example of that. I think this is only going to get more and more intense. It's not going to get less intense. So having a cool cultural show where people can look at the arts that are responding to the zeitgeist and be a part of that, I think is important. Arts are, what do they say? Politics is downstream from culture. So who are the culture creators? We are. I mean, the left are culture destroyers. They're not they're part of the enemy's plan. They do the enemy's work for them. The selling a banana taped to a wall with duct tape for $1 million or some stupid ass shit like that. That's really demoralizing to culture in general. Makes people hate the arts. What the fuck is that? So I got a lot of plans, for being a part of all of that. There's quite a big network that I'm involved with now, with lots of resources, which is really cool. So I got a lot of work ahead of me here. Really, really want to finish up this graphic novel, though, so I can kind of move forward with these other organizations that I'm involved with. There's still going to be marketing, and that's never really going to end, because I'm just going to continue to market this book. Just have like a regular spot for it on my show. You know what I mean? Like a kind of commercial spot or something. I just got a confirmation about. I don't. It might be too early to announce this. There's going to be some big names coming on the show to review the Alliance graphic novel, and that's exciting. That's super exciting. I desperately want to tell you who. Big names, but I think it's just slightly too early for that. So I'm kind of holding back. Oh, I'm holding my cards. Let's read some chat, see what you guys are up to. Sonata says culture building is a good concept. It's really important at this point. So let me respond a little bit to that. I try to look at things kind of like a chess game, where, okay, this is where we are right now. And, one can kind of guess where we'll be or where is it going, like all of these forces at play and, how that's going to play out. And then you kind of ask yourself, well, then what happens after that? And after that, and after that. And if, there's a lot of unforeseen variables. Nobody knew that Charlie Kirk was going to get murdered by Israel, and then his child trafficking wife would be put in charge of TPUSA and all this other crazy ass shit. Like no one ever knew that like Nick Fuentes would get so far down the pipeline and become like a mainstream figure. With which, what that literally means is that the JQ is now open. How do I say, like open season or something, on the Jays, and it's gone mainstream. Nobody could have foreseen that. We wished that were the case. Well, we're here now. Okay, so then the question is, well, what happens after that? You see a lot of new accounts of young, new, I don't know what to call them, like, I don't mean to call them like grifters, but sort of like news channels that are like people that just figured out the JQ. They just discovered what the JQ is, and they're on fire, and they're like, I've got to get this message out to the world. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, did you know? And blah, 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 blah. And this is stuff that the alt-right has been talking about for 10 years, already. So it's good to see new minds, new faces, out on the marketplace of ideas or what have you out on the internet. But at the same time, I feel like there's a big disconnect between this kind of older generation, the OG alt right guys, and this new generation of young people that are doing these shows. I'm gonna have to have a little cheat sheet of their names because I know at some point it's gonna need to be more, I don't know, professional about it. But there was a while there where I was looking at stuff like Jake Shields, for example. Now this is like a gym bro, MMA guy, and he's getting hip to politics and shit, and then he has Nick Fuentes on the show, and that for that time that was, I think, a big deal. It opened a window to a really huge demographic. You see what I'm saying? So here's the thing: at what point do we stop obsessing about our enemies and turn around and start obsessing about ourselves and saying like, well, who are we? And let's invest our energy into building who we are. Discovering who we are historically, culturally, spiritually, and then rebuild the world in our image. That is the Imperium. And whenever you hear me talk about Imperium art, it's about that process. And yes, I did kind of coin that. It's not like an actual convention in language or in the movement yet. I'm hoping that this idea picks up. Perhaps with time, it could, and with the work that I do, it could. And all of that's even based on the work that I've already done with the Imperium Art documentary that I have on this channel. So if you go back, look into my playlist. Set list is for a band. Then you're gonna see lots of amazing art, interviews with lots of important people about what would the arts of the white identity movement look like. What should that be? Now imagine asking Richard Spencer and Mark Brahman and Mark Collette and Frody Midjord and all kinds of different people within the sphere, like what does it mean to make white identity art, that expresses the struggle and the cause that we're in. So if hours and hours and hours of our guys talking about that. And so, like I said, it's a kind of an academic documentary, and it's meant to create the foundation for this next move, which is the Imperium Calling Nationalist Culture Review show. So that should be, it's kind of like a lineage, or it's sort of like, what do I say? A legacy that I'm hoping to leave. When I die and I have to go through the Bardo and I have to face the archons that are trying to convince me to go back into the cycle of reincarnation after they wipe my memory, I will at least know that I left something good on this earth, and I'll feel very proud of that. But I don't plan on coming back, though. I don't plan on coming back. I just want to merge with the monad. There you go. That's your new song, Merge with the Monad. So this is a really neat moment here because Tradcath turns into a lion. You can barely see that line work there, but there's this transformation that happens. It's pretty fucking cool. Anyway, let's read some comments. We'll get way behind in my comments here. Hang tight. Mm, wow, way behind. Hold on, guys. Hold your horses. Sam Hyde, The Greatest Black Hebrew. I read that. I'm just on my phone between practicing piano, so I'm sort of going to be ducking in and out. I'm curious and may check it out more. Cool. Great that you play piano. That's fantastic. I play guitar and bass. Rexus says I'm subscribed to one of Sam's videos. He's called Thesmal, the Small Dude. Okay, I don't know what that is. It's weird, wild world. I'm always interested in hearing about other experiences. Well said. Cool. I'm a pretty serious musician myself. My dad, unfortunately, a bit of a lefty, is into visual arts. So interesting, visual art rubbed off on me. Culture building is a good concept. It's really important at this point. Yeah, like I said, you know, the JQ is not the end of the rainbow. It's, in a sense, like in karate, when you get a black belt, that's actually, that means that you've learned all the techniques, you've mastered the techniques, and now you can begin learning martial arts. So like in America, you get a black belt and they think that they finished it. Like, yep, I'm finished, I know everything now. But you don't until you are on the battlefield and you're, you know, in combat using the techniques and learning the true organics of combat. You're still, you know, just because you speak a language doesn't mean that you can communicate. You know, you gotta, I always say, like, if you're gonna learn French, then go to France. You know, you can't just have like an academic knowledge of a thing. You gotta use it. So we gotta develop our culture, you know, and take a lot more time to rebuild civilization in our image. Our enemies have totally usurped our narrative. They lied to us. They control all the forms of media. Therefore, whatever we see in school books and Hollywood, whatever, we just take for granted as, oh, that's the truth. But it's not. And, you know, that's the Great Awakening. And it's when people finally see how deep the rabbit hole goes, their hatred of the small hats gets more and more and more and more and more, and it's pretty heavy. It's pretty heavy, and I'm not like preaching hatred over here, but there's a lot of dues to be paid, if you know what I'm trying to say. But anyway, the focus is not like hurt these people, but instead of help our people. You know what I mean? That's the focus. So. And it starts with culture. Culture is where it's the arts and music, etc. That's the fire that we dance around. You know, it's the place that we congregate. It's the narrative that we share. It's a mirror through which we see ourselves. And so, it's you just I don't know. I can't emphasize enough how important it is. Hollywood has kind of become, you know, that's the strongest form of like art media, if you will, that has the biggest influence, you know. That, you know, we don't all have like $100 million lying around to just, you know, make movies and shit. But comics are movies on paper, which I love. I like narrative art. Of course, there's books and literature. Do people read books anymore? You know, that's kind of a disturbing thing to say, but the younger generations are very different. I don't know how many of them really read. I suppose, of course, there are. You know, I'm not saying nobody reads anymore, but they just have a different kind of media consumption habit, I guess. Not only that, like, it feels like the younger generation is far less like patient. They can't seem to like set their mind to a thing for longer than a few minutes. Anyway, I'm concerned that the conspiracy, for want of better term, goes way deeper beyond the obvious culprits, and people will miss both the nuances and some of our own people who have made a dark deal. Yeah, that's like the elephant in the room in a sense. That's a good point. This is something I brought up recently in like a post somewhere. I forget, probably maybe Twitter or someplace. But anyway, I said something to the effect of like, in a way, we have to take the blame for this. We consented to this. We fell for this. There's something our own people failed us to the extent that they took the money. You know what I'm saying? They took the money and they signed the contract. And, that's fucked up, right? So this is my point. In the arts, you are who you behave according to who you think you are. And what is the narrative of who you are? We must control that narrative so that our people don't, sign the contract and sell out. Our people have to have character and kind of a racial, moral imperative that we understand, that we all know. And we'll know not to, like, for example, if I were king, I would stop all exportation of all of our sciences, all of our technology, all of our medicine, our finances, language. I would stop teaching English in other countries. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would cut us off totally from the non-whites and let them just, evolve according to how their genetics and culture allow, and let that just take its course in nature. Whereas we will be totally isolated from being abused by them. That's not to say we couldn't trade with them or travel or do something, whatever. But, we're the ones with the flying cars, not them. You know what I'm saying? This whole pathological altruism of like, we've got to save the world it's bitten us in the ass. It's really fucked us up terribly, and we can't do it. So that's got to stop. And I know I know a lot of people would say, well, that's kind of radical. And I say, fuck you to that, because you're an idiot if you don't see the truth of it. You can't, a lot of the world is just a battle between high and low IQ people, to be quite honest with you. Like, democracy is a shit system. You put decision making in the hands of people who have no fucking idea about how politics work, and they vote emotionally. like what the, our enemies love democracy. This is a threat to our democracy. Oh, we have to enforce, democracy into other countries. That's literally just a lie. That's just a lie. I'm missing out on tons of chat. There's a lot of interesting conversation, and I'm not reading it. World War Cool's dad, culture building. That's actually a really good point. It should be so enemy-centered and rather look at ourselves. Love your people more than you hate your enemies. I mean, hatred is only useful insofar as it is a defense mechanism against things that would hurt us. It's a natural biological reaction to anything or anyone that threatens us. We naturally feel hatred towards that. And if you don't, then there's something fucked up about you. Hatred isn't bad in and of itself. It wouldn't exist if it didn't have an important role, But obsessing over it and like building a whole culture around it is not healthy, You can weaponize it for certain things if those things, are beneficial to us, and in terms of like defending our women or our children and stuff like of that nature. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not anti-hate. I think that's a leftist. What's the word I'm looking for? It's basically meant to disarm us. Like, hate has no home here. Do you ever see those posters on people's yards? Hate has no home here. That is so gay. I despise that. I like just want to egg that house like so bad. It's very feminine, which is really, of course, very schizophrenic in the sense that, like, you know, I want to morally judge and be over you, and I'm telling you not to hate people while I hate you intensely. You know what I mean? Because like liberal women are just they're just creatures of hate. They're creatures of hate. They're the managerial class of the death of Western civilization. You know, they hate white men more than probably maybe Jews and blacks. You know, look, because they're the ones facilitating everything. They're the ones behind. You know, they're the pencil pushers. They're the secretaries. They're you know, the college professors. They're the psychiatrists. You know, the school teachers. And look at what they're fucking doing. Look at the damage they've done. Holy fuck. No, no, no. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. About ourselves. I'm concerned with the conspiracy. I think I read that. As for culture, I believe in both preservation and reinvigoration. I want to see our culture constantly revitalized. Try to play classical music in a bold style, beginning new life to it. Good. That you fucking rock, bro. I'm right behind you on that, man. If you maybe I don't know, maybe you can come on my culture show at some point. We can talk about that. That'd be pretty neat. Because I'm featuring creators in our culture. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of artists on the show. Interesting. Um, excuse me. Let's read. Rexus says, "Yep, with instruments, BMSS use of the organ piano was fantastic. Said that they had to rebrand and abandon their organ to avoid blacklisting for eternity." Who is BMS? Yes, I was going to ask the same. So there's an artist being just an artist. True. With the pathological altruism, that's where I agree with libertarians' disdain of altruism. Now, I don't completely agree with disdain for it. I understand why, because I once was libertarian. Okay. Yeah, that's part of the pipeline, isn't it? Right? BMSS means Black Magic SS. Like, I get it. Okay. It boils. Oh, hello to Eitzwigen, which it's always embarrassing when you run a show like this and you can't pronounce people's names. It's like, I don't mean any disrespect. You know, I wish to God I could sound cool and be like, say it correctly, you know. It boils down to tribe versus tribe, and Euros who support the main enemy tribe aren't on our side. So, I mean, again, like if I were king, these people would have pretty severe punishments, like very severe public punishments, where, you know, it's shown that like when you betray your race and your people, that's not going to be treated kindly. That's not going to be accepted, as it should be. And all of that, again, is part of this racial consciousness, the idea of, okay, like everything according to the left is like white man bad. Like they're hyper focused, militantly focused on shoving race into your face all day long. I mean, I bought a can of, a bottle of cranberry juice. And on the cover is a picture of like a black man with like mulatto kids, and they're like, "Yay, we're drinking cranberry juice," just like in real life, And I'm like, even on a fucking can of cranberry juice, I still have to have the message sent to me that like, you know, I'm being replaced, and misogynation or deracination, and you know what I mean. It's insidious. It's everywhere. That's all going to change. That's all going to change. All of that is clearly designed. We have been so profoundly propagandized with all of this. We live in a media echo chamber that's anti-white. It's mind bending if you really think. When you see the scale of it all, it's mind bending. It really. It's again, they talk about like leaving the matrix. Well, seeing that is one huge part of leaving the matrix, the anti-white matrix, right? You know, making whites so that they can't even talk about race. It's so uncomfortable. That's gonna stop. That's all gonna stop. And again, making a cool show where we openly celebrate that. That's leading the way. You see what I mean? And because again, people behave according to the narrative of who they think they are. And if we have pride in ourselves and we respect ourselves and we know who we are historically, culturally, then we're not going to let people abuse us. We're going to look out for each other. We're going to make that a priority. So that's the long-term kind of cultural engineering goal, if you will, of the show, and essentially my whole mission, you know. That's why I entitle things Imperium Art or Imperium Calling, because I want us to be one people globally, kind of white globalism. That's a way of looking at it. White globalism. Oh. That's actually not a proper term because I think globalism seeks to take other people's resources, and that's not what I'm saying at all. The idea of like going into other countries and taking their resources, to me, is actually anti-white in the regard that it now means we are entangled with another country and we have to do something in some way with them, that it's not about us. If we can put a fucking robot on the moon, we can figure out ways to get the things or make the things we need with the technologies and creativity that we have. You get my point? It's anti-colonial is what I'm saying. Not everybody agrees with that. I do see that, but that's my position for sure. Definitely. I feel like if you're a true nationalist, then you're going to respect the sovereignty of other nations. You know what I mean? Like, why else would people do that if they weren't capitalist or communist? You see my point? Capitalists and communists are the ones that want to break into other countries and take their shit. Not in third position. I could be wrong. I mean, Mussolini was. He's Mussolini, and that's his brand, I guess, with North Africa. I don't know, maybe you could make some arguments with like the Third Reich, but at the same time, my understanding is Hitler was trying to unite Europe against communist Russia, which of course is bullshit, like Jewish Bolshevism, which is proxy for Zionism. Whoa, man, I'm such a big lecturer. I have a big mouth. Okay, thanks for telling me. Sounds like a fun guy. when you whine about Jays but have no real depth beyond that. Plus, excuse me, I'm sorry, don't offer much to our culture. It's kind of winds up being a slave mortality thing. Whoa, deep. Oh, 100 points right there, bro. Really, really good. I love it. Trad Dad is here. Yo, Don and crew to a new and more strength check to a new, more prosperous new year. Thank you, sir. We are heading up. This is our year. Eights Wigan says, might is right is what it boils down to. Hey, critical reviews here. Hello, hello, my lovely friend. Sonata says, hey man, I'd love to come on a culture show. I'm trying to be, by the way, I got to get critical review on this show. We need to set something up soon. Like we could just do a casual chat because I need to test out some technology and things. And I kind of, I'll have to email you about that, but I want to get you on soon. I hope we can do something real soon. Sonata says, hey man, I'd love to come on. Trying to be careful walking the line of my own principles as well as dealing with external pressure, but I'd be very interested. I'd even play live. Well, that'd be exactly what I need you to do, is to play live for sure, unless you have recorded stuff. Critical review. I got my OBS multi-channel live streaming up and running. Wow, OBS. I tried learning it. I'm not a tech guy. Like I like StreamYard. It's very simple. It's for, like, I'm not an idiot with technology, but if you're doing a show like the way I do a show, you're using your wit, you're using your personality, you're talking, you're responding to questions, you're trying to get your guests to say interesting things and feel comfortable, and, to have to be fucking around with like 10,000 buttons and figuring shit out, and then if you don't get it right, then the show's screwed up. It's like, I don't have time for that. I would have to have like a tech person in the background, like a production person, to do that kind of stuff, because I get angry, and then I always sound like a jerk because I'm angry. You're like, oh, that Donald Kent, he's so angry. I'm not. I am angry sometimes. But I just like shit to go well. I want things to work well. I like to do a good show. I want people to have fun. It's got to have a certain level of quality. And if I'm fucking around with OBS, that'll frustrate me, and I won't bring out the best in me, if you know what I'm trying to say. Let's see. Rexus says, I can't even read that. Interracial misogynation isn't inherently wrong by itself. It's how it's being used for that message to replace us is insidious. Right. And this is something that I've brought up many times on many shows, but a lot of people are uncomfortable talking about it, and I'll bring it up again. That's the fact that there's a lot of young people, a new generation of people who are half white. And I feel like it's not their fault that their parents mixed or whatever, and like they don't have they don't seem to have a comfortable place in the world per se. And I think in the new world that's coming, we need to be compassionate to them and offer them a door in, if they identify with who we are and what we are. If they can naturally, organically say, like, yeah, I know my mom is Chinese, but, I grew up in America and I'm white. You know what I'm saying? If they can sincerely say that, I feel like there needs to be space for those people. Does that make sense? What's your take on that? What's your take on that? I'd like to get your opinions on that. But I'm a strong advocate of that. I'm a strong advocate of having alliances, like racial alliances. I have a friend who is a Christian Palestinian. Wrap your head around that. And we have really intense discussions about the Jews. Really intense, as you can fully imagine, right? I mean, you can totally imagine how this guy experiences that, right? It's quite different. And so there's like a really natural and profound alliance that we have. And it's not a detriment to what I do in the movement. It's not a detriment to the white identity movement in any way. He's not trying to like hurt us in any way, shape, or form. He respects who we are and what we do, and he, calls America home and does it. He's actually half Polish, so he's not like 100% Palestinian. But to look at him though, you'd still kind of you'd see the olive, like you'd think of him as like maybe a bit Semitic or Middle Eastern. But regardless, being Christian is obviously like a big part of that. That has a certain, an important dimension to those things. I think our people spurg a lot. They're very like purity spiraling about these type of things. And I don't know, say like they've got a right to their opinion. I'm not, I don't know. I think there's wisdom in what I'm saying. And I think realistically, we're going to have to come up with some form of what I would call like, how like governments have international relations with other countries. We as a movement should have something like that with people of color within America. You know what I mean? They don't have to be our enemies. In fact, they'd be better off friends. You know what I'm saying? They've already been weaponized against us. We don't need more of that, do we? Do we? You see where I'm going with this? It's like, when I go into a space, let's say, I go dancing every weekend and shit like that, and I go into a club, and straight away I got to read the room. And I can see the guys that are the ones that might want to fight, and then I see the other people that are there to just have a good time. And so, depending on the situation, and I generally avoid those kind of people because I obviously don't want to get in a fight. But then there's sometimes you can't avoid them, and now you got to face them for some reason. And when I do face them, I'll disarm them with a smile and a joke and something funny, and I'll give them the respect that they want, the validation they want. And yes, it is a kind of control. It is a kind of manipulation, but it's done for everybody's good. You see where I'm going with that? You see? So because, how do I put it? Like, it's better to make a man your friend than to make him your enemy, you see, in the long run, right? We don't need more enemies. It's like, why? Why? Why would we want that? So I think there's logic to this, but I don't think that the movement is really ready for that. We're all so fucking angry. We're watching our people being robbed, raped, and killed every fucking day, and we're furious. We're ready for throwdown. We're ready for war. I mean, war is being waged upon us, and we know that. We feel it every day. But yeah, I don't know. It's tricky. I should maybe write this shit down someday. Kind of put it in like a little lesson guide or something. I don't know. Let's read. I agree when they use social engineering and influence. That's when it's wrong. Swiggen says part of our biology is our high-level ingenuity, and with that we build the modern world. Correct. Regardless of who built it, it is those who wield it got there through might is right. So you can't deny that. I mean, there was a lot of taking of resources and, you know, colonialism, that this and that and the other thing. Will to power. I guess that's a pretty fucking big topic. That's a pretty big topic. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what can I say at the moment on this. I think what I would say for now is that it's just not needed anymore. It's not necessary anymore. I feel like we've kind of moved forward enough where our 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 technologies, etc., are good enough where we we can just focus on prosperity. The, how do I say this? Like, making sure that every white family has a good home and good education and, things that you need in life. You know what I'm saying? And there's none of us are sleeping on the streets at night. None of us are things like tax breaks for having more babies, all of that kind of stuff. Because if the entire white world, and I'm talking even like from Russia, and I know Russia's pretty fucked up, but like if all white people collectively said, racially, we're going to be a family now, and we're never going to abuse each other, and we're going to respect each other, and it's going to be good for everybody, and that's going to be the focus moving forward. What a world it would be. It'd be the Imperium that I'm talking about. It's a utopian concept. I need a little water here. Hold on a second.
I never believed ready-to-eat meals could be healthy until Factor. Trust me, Factor is the average ready.
I keep turning this sound off because of these fucking commercials, and then when I turn the music on, a commercial comes on. Excuse me. See, I was talking about fruit juice, and you guys see that little picture there? Boundless fruit power. Look at that. Bye bye, white man. You're not in your own country anymore. You're not in your own narrative anymore. Oh boy. Anyway, I'm afraid, Dave. I'd love it. I'd love to. Critical Review says, I'd love to. I just did that with mine tonight. Good. Oh, wow. Got all the studio, etc. I get it. It can be frustrating. It's Swigan. I wish I could say that right. Ironically, we need to. If you could write that phonetically for me, then I don't have to make an ass of myself. That would be nice. Just type in how to say that phonetically. Ironically, we need to become the subverters in order to take it all back. So right now we do, yes. I get that. But like revealing the Jewish hegemony is subversion, and it's finally gone full tilt. That's not to say that everybody believes it or follows it. There's still, you know, people that have to be enlightened, but we've come a long way. Tricky. Let's see. We once used such tactics. Tricking the enemy used to be part of the Aryan strategy, but now people tend to think it's evil. Coronavirus is here. What up, boys? Hey, hey. Welcome to the show. Critical Review, Wigan, yes, true. Kalergi and others had influence and made it a cultural initiative close to a century ago. Think about this. It's been 100 fucking years that they've been doing this, that they've been working on this. That's intense. I mean, fuck, They've infiltrated not only our, government media, but other countries. Just take a second to try to think about how many people have died from communism in the past 100 years. In like, just say like China alone. I actually like did a Grok AI to say like, what's the estimated total number of people that died of communism in the past 100 years? I naturally, stupid me, I don't remember the exact number, but of course it was like, hundreds of millions. And communism is Zionism's proxy war. It's the ideology or the military formula of Zionism set up. I mean, we all know that like Islam and communism are these kind of like global domination sort of systems. You know what I mean? Like they won't stop until all countries are fucking converted. It's like it's crazy, right? I mean, I think anything like that should be just like obliterated from Earth. Like that kind of, you get what I'm trying to say. But yeah, this Imperium concept, it's really very much like, just like what I said, like an extremist. What's the word when you separatism? Where all white countries would form into one kind of racial family, if that makes sense. It would not be political per se. It would be spiritual. You see what I'm saying? It would recognize we are who we are. We know who we are. We recognize our differences or this or that and our histories and culture, but moving forward, we're gonna see ourselves as one. We will help each other. We'll share our resources, and we will become, how do I say, we'll fulfill our total destiny in our genetic and spiritual way. I'm drawing, so I'm not like, I don't have all my intellectual power put into what I'm trying to say here, but I think it's fairly clear. I hope it's fairly clear what I mean. And the only thing harmful that would come from that to non-whites is that we would remove all of our everything that we have from them. It's not like we'd go in and take all the cars out of China or something. That's not what I mean. It's something silly like that. But every car that we invent from now on, we would only keep to ourselves. And then they would have to, all the other countries would have to figure out how to build their own shit and not take it from us. You see what I'm saying? Honestly, think, where would the world be without us? It'd be in the fucking Stone Ages. If literally everything we ever made up to now were just kept for us. Here we have, like I said, we've got like a robot on Mars. Where do you think the Chinese got space technology from? and more than that, now they have the highest IQ of all the races, but I would argue they have a fairly low EQ, or emotional social intelligence. I can say that because I lived in Asia for 5 years and I worked with the Chinese deeply for a very, very long time. And I have a lot of love for them. So I'm not speaking out of like any kind of like malice. And they'd be the first ones to say like, we know we know how we are. In fact, I've had many Chinese people tell me that they want communism because it's a totalitarian, authoritarian system. And I was, well, why the fuck would you want to be like dominated by this system? And they said because we Chinese, like the day after communism falls, we'll go into like civil war and we'll kill each other, and then we'll live in states of nonstop war. And when we have one state ruling over all of us with a giant sword, then that stops us from killing each other. Can you fucking imagine saying that? I mean, that's wild. To me, that's wild. Like to say that we know who we are well enough to know that we can't trust our fucking selves. Holy shit. I've had enough of these commercials. Shut up. Fuck you. This is my show, not your show. But think about that, though. That's powerful. Let's read on. Kalergi and I always want to say calamari. Kalergi and others had influenced and made it a cultural initiative. Yeah, I read that. Totally agree, Donald, with the people who are mixed. Thank you. Europe needs to stay European. Yeah, I mean, Europe and America are different, obviously, right? If I were European, I would have a right to call myself a white nationalist, because those are white countries. That's the origin of white people. America has a totally different history. Of course, I want it to be majority white, but I don't want to disenfranchise people who are not. That's all I'm saying. So I figure, like, I don't know, let them have their own communities, how do I put this? Like, come on, what are they called? The Amish. Let the blacks have their own communities, and the Hispanics and the Asians or whatever, and they can grow their own food, and they can do this. Now, I don't know that's I know that sounds kind of like wow, big topic, big topic. Moving on, the young are so confused, even the ones who sense what is wrong and are even nominally on our side and still mixed up and lost. As a rare-based millennial, I feel like I can help this. You have a duty to help it, my man. I'm sorry to say this. I hope it doesn't scare you, but the wisdom that you possess, that we all possess, if you've come this far, it comes with a responsibility. It's with great power comes great responsibility. And once you know the truth, you have to speak it, and you have to be the leader. You have to. I think you know what I'm saying. I don't have to lecture. We need an underground Axis. Oh, you're speaking to somebody named Axis? I don't know what at Axis means. Not easy in today's text. Sonata absolutely thinks. I was lost for a while as a Zoomer. We have to come up with a different way seeing things they haven't co-opted already. Good point. This attitude of making friends with others, even other races, is wise. It should be entirely possible to assert ourselves and be decent to others. Totally true. I mean, there's nothing wacky about that. Germans allied with Muslims in World War I and II. That's pretty wild. 8 Swigian says the final pill is realizing that what the enemy is doing is unapologetic and based. They didn't have some cucked moral guilt. They enact full-scale survival mode. We need less whining and more action. Will to power is what you're talking about. Yes, we need to be more subversive. I agree. Need to learn how to be shrewd. Agreed. Hippocratic oath. Hey, thanks for the juice, the little apple juice there, buddy. I was thirsty. Welcome. Erasing the enemy is based, and our enemy has zero qualms about it. They have no guilt, have no self-respect. Survivalists should have guilt for wanting to dethrone and conquer, so neither should we. So I hear you. I know what you're trying to say. if your enemy literally wants to play in your blood, and loves to like mutilate your body when you're dead, and like these aren't people, they're monsters. We have to have some level of understanding that. Rexus, yep. Biggest I will ask for the Imperium is how will it work? So that's the big question. That is the big question, and that's something I'm really glad you said that, because if you go to the Imperium art playlist, which has again hundreds of hours, that's what we discuss. Like, what would the future look like? I think I was one of the first people out there asking that question. Like, we have to imagine the world that we want before we can make it, we can manifest it. It's not just, the Jews this and the Jews that. You understand what I'm saying. So we can move on. At Swegan, thank you. At Swegan, thank you. Oh, finally, I don't sound like an ass. Okay, at Swegan says, yeah, I agree with what you said about painting the enemy out to be evil. We need to know the difference, though, the difference between moral cuckery and intertribal morality, aka survival of our own. Yes. Even Odin is the masked one, known for deception and trickster. Yeah, I mean, all forms of warfare. Like I'm kind of a like what's the guy? Sun Tzu. Art of War. I teach kung fu, so like I think about strategy a lot. I know what I get it. You do what it takes to win. You see. That's why people need to view Lord Farquaad from Shrek for who he really is, a man who wants to protect his kingdom and wants to order, not some mustache twirling villain. Very good. Pan-European identity. That's pretty much it. Yeah, I think Pan-European identity is the Imperium. Hey to Ann Ross, welcome 1766. Not painting the enemy as evil is exposing their evil. Not painting the enemy as evil, it's exposing. Not sure I get that clearly. So I'm going to show your comment here. Yeah, there is some subversion going on by YouTube. We once had zero guilt for totally the enemy. That will take lots of time, though. Right now, we need to use propaganda. Yeah, so we're all on the same page, I would say, pretty much. I think the things that you're saying are things that it's kind of in the air. It's sort of in the zeitgeist. We know that there's no political solution. And it's going to take certain types of activities to get through the situation. How and when and in what form and all that happens, I have no idea. But I'd say, so for me, because I'm an artist and an educator, those are my tools. That's the tool set that I have to fight for our people. You get what I'm saying? Someone who is like military, or whatever, they can run that side of things. Someone who's medical, they can provide that. Someone who can do homesteading, they can do that. You see what I mean? Like, we would all have to kind of figure out who can do what. What is the what roles can we play? I think you understand what I'm saying. All right, we use preaching to the choir. Social influence and propaganda, which is really what we have. Like, that's our main tool right now, I would say. That's very much what's happening, and it's good. But again, I'm trying to project into the future. Like, at what point do we move on? Like, what's after the JQ? And I think it's community building. I think it's the Imperium. Building the Imperium, it's a colossal endeavor. I don't want to be the only one to say what that should be. This is why I'm trying to have a conversation about it, is to get other people to start thinking about it and saying, yeah, let's really, really imagine, you wake up tomorrow in the Imperium. And what do you go to work? Do you work on the farm? Or do you have, 7 kids? Where do you live? What sort of technology are we using? What are the standard, how does the government operate? All of that stuff. And I would say it's already baked into third position ideology. We can take bits and pieces of National Socialism and syndicalism or any other kinds of third position ideologies that have already laid out and plotted out, what needs to be, how it needs to be. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of people that have done the academic deep dives and have that information, namely Culture Thug. Cultured Thug is a friend of mine. You can go to rumble.com, Cultured Thug, and discover his channel where he does very deep dives into all the history and academics of third position. So now you have no excuse. Now you gotta go and listen to it. Critical review, good though to know others see the same thing. Yes. Yeah, I think. All right, wow. Whew. Look, we just solved all the world's problems, guys. How wonderful. Hooray. Oh my gosh. It's weird not having music. I just don't want to listen to commercials. So annoying. Commercials are the bane of my existence. Commercials will be banned in the Imperium. Yeah, that's funny. I would love that. I mean, like, what would be the point of having commercials if everybody is getting what they need? You see what I'm saying? Like, why build a society where we have to work to survive, per se? We should work to obviously got to survive, like food and shit or whatever. But there should be a lot of time poured into innovation, invention, art, culture. Those things, being masterful at, arts and sciences is where our time should be spent. We have, our technology is good enough where we don't need to slave our fucking days away to, like, really honestly be just like a tax plantation for fucking Israel. Fuck them. Ben Shapiro telling us, well, you really shouldn't ever you should never retire. No, just keep making money for Israel. Yeah. Scumbag. Bow chicka wow wow. That's my girl. I was thinking about that. I actually started the show with that, but like nobody was on air yet when I said that. That's my new thing. Bow chicka wow wow. Maybe I can find the bow chicka wow wow music. Italian heist music. Oh, that was fun. Dub House, best of 80s. This is kind of cool. All right, hold on.
Does he speak as slowly as you do?
This is gonna be a little dub, house dub. I had a really great time going out last night. I went dancing. Just shut up and play the music. Shut up. All right, and we're back. Uh-oh, one of the messages is being hidden. Let's see what it says. Oh, it got automatically deleted somehow. Bow chicka wow wow. Anyway, let's get back to work, folks. Where we at? Oh man, I'm a bit fatigued. I gotta back to work. Christmas vacation's over. Back to work tomorrow. Ed Swegan says Ben Shapiro's Rat Voice should be the name of an indie band. That's good. Dude, that's funny, man. I always think of jokes like that. Like, every once in a while, we'll come up with, like, a funny phrase of some kind, and then I'll stop and say, oh, that's the name of our new band. You know? It's like a Donald Kentism. There's a guy in he's like a sort of What Our Collective OG, goes by the name DJ Boxcar, and he's a DJ, obviously, right? So, he just had a really, really great show last night with another friend in our sphere who's a nationalist, but he's also a DJ. And, oh, it's just a great show, really hardcore. Okay, this music's getting a little silly. Let's probably put something else on as it kicks in. I was looking for something more musical. I know we gotta make money on dirty commercials.
The worst golf carts.
Alright, now back to the musical stuff. So, love that idea. Yes. You gotta wonder how is history gonna look back on this time. You know what I mean? Like this is a crazy time, my boys and girls. It's incredible, you know. This is like, it's like the meme where you see the children and they say, you know, hey Dad, what were you doing during the Great Awakening? You know, and well, I was paying taxes so that Israel could, you know, or whatever, you know. Like, what will we be remembered for? How will we lay the foundation for the world to come? How will we fight a literal global power with all of the military and technological power? I mean, it's a lot like a lot of the Hollywood movies that we've been watching for years. They kind of have conditioned us to just accept this idea of this one, like, maniacal one world order in which the rest of us are really pretty much slaves, and they know everything and they have access to everything, and we are just organic animals on a farm that have nothing but our wits, you know. Do you see the movie Oblivion with Tom Cruise and Morgan Freeman? Oh my God, I love that film. Oh, so good. Aesthetically, it's just amazingly beautiful. I guess I can tell the story of the film, but it's just part of that whole trope of, you know, this kind of like mega mind super government corporation that is above everyone and can't be defeated. It's all powerful, you know. How are we gonna? That's the greatest challenge in humanity is to, and it falls on us in our generation. Huh? Thought you were gonna have an easy life, didn't you? And then I think of that, and then I think of the people that chose the wrong side. You know, like every FBI agent that is, you know, harassing people in our movement, every judge or cop that ever, you know, put one of our guys away because of, you know, hate speech or some fucking shit, you know. And of course, shit's so much bad, so much worse in Europe. Like, if you listen to, I was just on Millennial, and he's got different shows for the different, like, England, Australia, Ireland, and the way that they talk on those shows is very, very cautious. They're really, really careful about the words that they choose. And it doesn't feel natural. It's very, you know, like someone could be knocking at their door tomorrow and take them away. Just for saying the truth about, you know, the government is, you know, coerced. It's in league with our enemies. And its goal is to erase us. But before they erase us, they're going to rape all our women. You know what I mean? They're going to force us to work and then take all our taxes and apply that to, you know, Ukrainian, what are those laboratories where they cut people's organs out and they do all that shit with the like all that, like just, it's hell world. It's hell world, you know. It's pretty hard to really even look that shit in the eye, you know. But we're living it, folks. You are a superhero. You're a literal fucking superhero if you can fight that. You know what I mean? It's nuts, bro. Okay, let's read. I'm getting a little wacky here. Maybe I should calm down. It's the music. It's always the music. How long does it take you to sketch what you're working on? It's always case by case. Some pages are really, really detailed and others are not. This book is dialogue heavy, so not on this page. This is going to be mostly like sound effects and shit because of the shit happening. But like, I got to leave a lot of empty space where you can put, you know, word balloons and shit. So I'll just give you a quick look at something like that. So, you know, two guys talking, yelling at each other, figuring shit out, whatever. And then like lots of empty space. You know, they're talking and huge empty space here. The same. So that's not, there's no point in drawing a background when it's just going to get covered. It's stupid. I'll do little things like this, like put that in there maybe, you know. And that's, having a horizon line shows where the, kind of where the eye line is. Anyway, that's another topic, but you know, like 5 to 8 hours. And commercials cannot be escaped. You cannot escape commercials. You might be able to escape death, but you cannot escape commercials. Those are not our people. Sonata says, I feel that those of us who have figured it out have a mission to lead as many people through the troubles of the next decade, or as we can. I believe we can get through this better than ever. I agree. Beautiful. I'm happy to hear you say that. That's a beautiful sentiment. That is the right sentiment. is the right way to look at things. Community building, guys. I keep telling you, man. This is, you know, we only have each other. You know, no one's coming to save us. We gotta help each other out. You know. So let's be lion-hearted. Oh wow, how coincidental! I'm drawing a lion. Excuse me. All right, we're in the zone. In the zone. See how much nicer the show is when I shut up. I'll never forget. Every time I think about that, there was a time a long time ago when I was doing the show and I'm blathering on about politics like I do. And there was a new guy that just like, kind of, whatever, saw my video in his algorithm and turned it on and came over to watch the show. And, he really loved watching the comic book inking and was really into it. And then, like, in the chat, he wrote, like, shut up and draw. So, like, that's the best advice I've ever gotten. Shut up and draw. Oh, yeah, that was funny. Shut up and draw. Words of wisdom. A true Buddha. So, I've recently come to the conclusion that Buddhism is Eastern Gnosticism. I've gone so deep into Gnosticism that I have such a good understanding of it and then I've been studied, practiced Buddhism for so long that I know the cosmology and the practices of it, so that it finally went, like the bell went off, and I'm like, oh my God, I've been essentially learning Gnosticism all this time, over all these years. Which is, in the short version, How to Escape Reincarnation. I know I'm kind of switching topics here. It's getting a little esoteric, but it's just a recent epiphany that I had. Nice. 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 That's cool. I like that. Lions are so beautiful. They're such beautiful creatures. Oh, that's getting late. Those aren't people anymore. Yeah, I feel that those of us who have figured out. I read that. Believe we can get through. That's Wiegand says we have our biology, of course, but there's, excuse me, way more to the Aryan than that alone. That is for sure. I mean that now you're kind of getting into like UFOs and Agartha and what is the forget the constellation that the Nazi UFOs information came to with Marie Orsich. Marie Orsich was the psychic who got the schematics for UFOs from Aldebaran, yeah. And so apparently the the race of people in Aldebaran are like Caucasians. They're kind of like super Caucasians. Fascinating. Anyway, it's getting on the late side, gang, over here, and so I think I've done enough work, and I'm gonna wrap it up. This is a really, really engaging conversation. I'm so grateful to have amazing people in the chat tonight. Wow. Like, we need times and places to have these kind of conversations. And again, when you're coming to watch some artwork and, that's kind of a cool thing. So that's a cultural thing, right? So when I start the Imperium Calling show, I'll have cool guests on. I'll have like funny reels, cool edits, Agartha edits, kick-ass music, and we can learn about different projects that are going on in our culture. It's going to be the shit. I mean, I'm really excited about this show. It'll take time to get, off the ground and get to be known and stuff, but once it gets established, it'll be great. Anyway, let's read the last comments. Sonata, yes, I feel the same. Also, Donald, if we talk, I have to speak carefully because I'm based in Australia. Okay. I respect that, and the laws and speech here are fucking insane. I interviewed Joel Davis a couple times. I've been on a couple streams with Joel Davis. He's in jail right now in Australia for the work that he does. And that's not a crime. The work he's doing is good. It's the government that's the criminal in this case. And you know how all that works. But I would call him a friend per se. I mean, we don't like talk every day. Hey, buddy, But like we've been around the block long enough and crossed paths enough. And if you look in the Imperium Art playlist, you'll see my interview with him. Anyway, moving on. I'll do my best to have a real conversation if we do a stream. Okay. Don't ever put yourself in danger. You don't have to. Sonata, thanks. Critical review. They are basically not even European anymore. Literal end brain golem. Sorry, my autocorrect sucks. Yeah, that happens to me a lot. Like watching a fire cathartic. Yes. I've been enjoying the stream in the background whilst practicing Mozart. Brilliant. What do you play? Critical. I actually have a huge repertoire covering multiple sonatas, but too. Wow, man. Wow. We're in the company of greatness here, folks. Critical Review says, very cool. I like Beethoven. He had a new sound for his time. I just saw, what's it called? Immortal Beloved, Beloved Immortal. It's the Gary Oldman film of Beethoven. I recommend it. Rexus says, have a good night, Kent. Thank you, sir. Good night to my lovely friend Critical Review. At Swegan, thank you for helping me to say your name. There's elements of Indo-European mythology, such as Greek, where we can see crossover with alleged Eastern mythology, related to the idea of escaping reincarnation and going straight to Elysium. So let me drop a bomb right here. Do you guys know who Jason Reza Giorgiani is? You should. He's a big brain, greatest mind of our generation. You can look him up easily. And he has a Substack where he writes about how essentially the Eastern philosophy comes from the Scythians. So, like, the Scythians obviously are like some of the most ancient Caucasians that lived all across Russia. There were vast areas that they lived in ancient times, and apparently, like, so for example, in China, they've got all these mummies from 5,000 plus years ago, and they were white. They're all Caucasian. So, like, long story short is that he's essentially saying, like, Eastern philosophy is, even if it's Indo-European in some cases, like the Vedas, for certain Buddhism, the Buddha had blue eyes. In this Buddhist scripture, he's called the Great Aryan. His family lineage goes back to Iran, which is Aryan, and blah, 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 blah. So, like, it's a deep rabbit hole that most people's... There's so much about us that has been lied about and stolen from us. We don't realize how great we are as a people. And it's magical. It's so magical. That's going to all be part of the Imperium. That's part of why I say that it's not a political alliance, it's a spiritual alliance. It's not even an alliance, it's a coming home. It's a homecoming, a spiritual homecoming. Think about that. If I'll just stop there. I don't want to keep lecturing about this stuff, but I'm just planting these seeds. Moving on, Sonata, Beethoven is definitely a favorite. Where can I find your critical you and I may enjoy talking more? Yeah, you guys should connect. I've been seeing videos, avoiding the archons. I'm posting a lot on my Telegram. I'm big into Gnosticism and studying about the archons and how to die. The low end uninitiated get reincarnated. High end go to Elysium. Yeah, we're gonna have to talk more. That's for darn tootin'. At this YouTube channel, you'll find me here. I'm in RBN. E was spelled mistake. Elysium reminds me of Lord of the Rings. Well, in Gnosticism, they would say that you would return to the monad, or the source of all being, who is what you would call the true God. Not Yahweh or some kind of Moloch or some shit like that. God, true God is well past like human comprehension, in the sense that when they say in the Old Testament God said, "Oh, kill the Canaanites." Like, God wouldn't do that. That's only a devil would do something like that. You know what I'm saying? God was angry. God's not a fucking teenager, okay, shithead. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, that's a deep discussion for another time. Sonata. Oh, and I'll look into the stuff critical for discussion. The Scythians, I've been reading posts about them. Very, very cool. Are the Scythians Sumerian? That I can't answer. That's a damn good question. That is a freaking very, very good question. That is something you need to get into. Wow. You need to get into that. Check out the book The Scythians by Talbot Rice. Is become one of my favorite books. Sounds fabulous. I'm not reincarnating. I'll take on my new role as a guardian angel. So that's the other thing of it. In Buddhism, those are called bodhisattvas. And I actually took a bodhisattva vow when I took refuge and became an official Buddhist when I lived in Taiwan. These beings can incarnate in any way. They're sort of like demigods. But once you are free from the prison of the third dimension and the physical body, material world, you can work outside of time and space and materiality because you're not constrained by those things. But it all is based in compassion. If you don't have compassion, you don't have wisdom, and you cannot have any kind of good works towards this end. It's a path. It's a type of a path. The Bodhisattva vow views life in the sense that there can be no heaven as long as beings are suffering. How can you be in heaven knowing that there's like quadrillions of beings in agony all over the universe? That's a kind of a profound philosophical question. I'm not reincarnated. I read that. I think you've got the right idea on God, Donald. I'm not an angry teenager. Cool. Well, this was a kick-ass show, guys. You know why it was so good is because I had the best guests on. So if it's just Joe Schmo and we're talking about nothing and it's boring. The Scythians have been genetically proven Aryan. Fortress of Lu has a decent video about it. Yes, I think that's pretty well known. All right, on that amazing note, we're going to wrap up this incredible show. Wow, you guys have energized me. Thank you for your being so freaking cool, okay? Just being so damn cool. Just, give yourself a high five. All right, I love you guys. Have a good night, and see you again on the next Donald Kent Crazy Time live art show.